Hello, I'm Brad.
And I'm Jason.
You are listening to
Dice in Mind.
So today we actually have a special interview of nobody. We have had 5 weeks of phenomenal interviews.
Yeah.
Going back to Kelly Fitzpatrick,
Mhm.
writer, Star Trek writer,
Editor.
going for her Master of Fine Arts. We have Malcolm Shepard, who, writer for the Age System. I've actually had some other discussions with him about things. He's a fascinating interview. If you haven't listened to it, we are going to have him on again.
Yep. And let's hear it for Green Ronin in general.
Oh yeah. Troy and the social team there, so many people involved, and the Age System. I'm finding it more and more elegant. Chris Birch, president of Modiphius. That
was fascinating.
Man, the amount of things that he's juggling, I can't fathom that, and I'm juggling a lot.
And you are, and we've heard, and this will be clear in coming weeks with our second round of interviews. But we've heard that Chris is just always on.
Yeah. And so if you haven't listened to that one's worth it. President Modiphius, Star Trek, Dune, all sorts of different games, Mutant Chronicles. We had Michael Lowe. Michael was one that and Michael, if you're listening, it kind of came out of left field, but it was a fascinating one on education.
Just a detour into something we care about. Another thing we care about. It was wonderful. Yeah.
And if you haven't connected with Michael on Twitter, please do. There is a whole group of people that have started to come together, and there's a cohesive group within the RPG family. About using RPGs within education.
P12 and higher ed.
Yes. So Michael was one of those where we had to bring him in, just because we were fascinated by the work he's doing.
And we're really glad to be a little part of that community now because of our interests and our goals.
Well, and you teach leadership. We both have been in education. You actually teach. I've worked in technology where that it's supported education. So education is not a foreign topic to us.
No, not at all. In fact, honestly, Michael, if you're listening, we should probably tell you this up front, but we'll just hope you're listening anyways. If you're listening to this, a double thank you because, and Brad, this because we've talked about this subsequently. After our interview with Michael, I started thinking, I've never taken a sabbatical, and I think maybe I know what I would want to do. And it was a direct offshoot of that discussion. So thank you, sir. More on that later.
Yeah. See, that's that.
RPGs in real life.
Yeah. And we benefit, hopefully you all benefit. Michael, if you're listening, let us know, because that means we have a sixth listener. But so someday we'll get to 10. And then
Nami Malamed. Man, what a gracious, lovely person. Talk about creative. Oh my God.
Yeah. And someone who, as we record this, it's now announced that she is doing the soundtrack for Strange New Worlds for Star Trek.
And let's be honest about that.
Yeah.
Right. Because did we know about that?
No, we did. Well, we didn't officially know about it.
We didn't officially know, but it through no fault of her own. It became apparent, and we actually we said nothing because that was the right thing to do. You will never hear a spoiler here.
And we made it we always talk to our guests before we go on. We always ask them if there are things they want to talk about or not. We want to make sure that it's organic. We didn't do that with her. We as much as we really knew not to go beyond what we knew, because
we know
she would be under
it's hardcore NDAs.
She would have NDAs, and we didn't want to put her in any awkward position. But she had a mug, and it said Strange New World, and I caught it, and I'm like, ooh. But I'll be quite honest with you, I did not, when I saw it, I did not necessarily make the assumption that it was a connection with her to that. I just thought that she was getting great gratuitous vendor stuffs being involved with CBS Paramount.
Okay,
So
this is funny because usually the roles are reversed here. I instantly understood that meant she was scoring it immediately, because the only way you get that swag at that part of the process is if you're on the production team. But for whatever reason, I thought that was already public knowledge. And so I didn't say anything about it. And again, like you said, Brad, we want it to be like you said, we typically have a fairly extensive off-air discussion before and after with our interview guests, and Nami was, I think, kind of coming back to back with stuff, and so she met with us, and she gave us so much of her time. There was just we did not want to hold her any longer, but we are delighted that that is out and it's official, and that Nami is composing, because I have been writing for so many weeks now, almost exclusively to her Prodigy soundtrack. I can think of no higher praise on my own.
So no, you bring it up. We kind of talked about this
that's
before,
not
and I was gonna surprise this and bring this discussion up. What we'll come back to all the other stuff later. What are you writing?
Okay. So
I know you weren't expecting it right at this moment.
I
didn't think you were. You didn't know that I had planned on actually bringing this up to begin with.
So no. Okay. So let's indulge me here. Let's provide a little bit of context. So why are we not interviewing anyone today, and why are we just engaging in what we, but not our wives, would consider witty banter? Or probably any of you. Good on you. This is the big 4-0 for us. We're both well past 40, but the podcast today, as this releases, well, I guess forever, this is episode 40, which is kind of remarkable to the two of us, I think, because I mean, I'm sorry, I know many episodes ago, I started saying, okay, we're on the march to episode 50. But honestly, and then sometimes I would say we're on the march to episode 100. That was just to give us a little mojo, because we were recording like one a month. And then along the way, we went to weekly. We went to a primarily interview-driven format. I don't know about you, my friend, but for me, the podcast has become like one of my short list of actual pieces of like activity and scholarship. Like when I look at my list of what I have going on in life, professionally, academically, personally, this is literally on that short list.
I agree. Yeah. I'm nodding.
No, I've read that. So yes, you are. Thank you. So one of the other things on that short list is something that we've teased once or twice very subtly over this past almost year. We'll have more on that in future episodes. Another friend and I are writing a book. And I appreciate you asking. An actual book. We signed a contract with a publisher in January, which I'll be honest, still brings a smile to my face every time I even say that to myself, because it's so darn surreal. And it's a funny thing. I write a lot these days because I'm writing a book with Aaron, but I write a lot anyways. I'm an active, or I mean, I'm a relatively active scientist, right? So I'm constantly working on this or that, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's amazing to me after 20 years in the field that there are universities who will, like, I mean, that I'm paid, right, as a scientist, as a professor, to do any of the things I do. It's amazing to me. But as you know, and as the rest of our group of close friends and family knows, and as my mother just told me not too long ago, she was telling some of their friends, Jason's always had a thing for Star Trek, and I have, and so Aaron and I, we signed a contract.
Did you mention this already? But I just want to make sure we had Aaron on.
I haven't said. I was going to thank you. I was going to say that. Yeah. So yeah, if you go way back, one of our actually surprisingly more popular episodes, you interviewed Aaron and me because we had just been published on Picard Day last year for which was just hilarious to us. We had an article come out on StarTrek.com, and we'll put that in the show notes. I still that brings me great joy, as silly as that is. But by the time that article came out, we'd already been working for a while. I had already said to Aaron, this is a legit book idea, and let's do it, and we'll figure it out. We'll find a publisher. Took a while, as it often does, I think. We found one. We are working with McFarland, who is this just wonderful academic publisher. And we are actively writing. I don't have a good subtitle yet, but our working title is Lessons from the Ready Room. Same as our little article on StarTrek.com. And as you might surmise, we are writing a full-length book on leadership through the lens of the grand captains of Star Trek. And we've got a chapter each for Archer, Pike, Kirk. I'm trying to make sure I get the order right.
Okay.
Cisco, Janeway, Picard. Yep. And then we're also going to be addressing Burnham and Saru.
Okay.
And because of the timing of the deadlines, we actually have got it set up where we're saving the rest of the Pike chapter to the very last part of the process, so that we'll have a handful of Strange New Worlds episodes out that we can hopefully use for the book to make it as current as possible. And our target audience is everyone from advanced undergrads to really grad students, and especially professionals, right? Like, we're writing this so that it could be dropped affordably, slickly into like executive training workshops, that type of thing. If you are into leadership and you agree with us, and I think Brad, you'd agree too, that the bulk of leadership books, A, are not actually based on any research, and B, aren't really enjoyable to read, to cross streams for a bit. As Master Yoda said, page turners they are not, right? I mean, not to be immodest, but we're writing with a sense of humor, and we're writing with a sense of engagement. So, my friend, I appreciate you asking. It's huge news for me and for us, and there'll be more. This. I don't think this can possibly come out in print until at least the end of 23. Just because of the schedule, but it's happening. Its contract is signed, and the book is way past half written.
Well, and you're always so nonchalant, even with me, about bringing this type of stuff up. So it was during one of the nights, either that we were chatting or recording an episode, where you were just kind of doing a passing, oh, by the way,
yeah,
we've got a contract. So,
yeah, that's right.
and to me,
yeah,
and to me, I'm wired a little hotter. So if I had been in that position, I don't care what time it would have been, I would have been calling. So kudos to you for maintaining an even strain as you kind of just willingly pass, let it pass along. And I have an active interest in this because, like you said, I've been in leadership in the technology field for quite a while.
Yeah.
I have read, or I have been part of reading groups for a number of different leadership books. And I give people credit for writing. I'm not a published writer. I'm not much a writer. But like you said, a lot of this is not research based. It is, people say it is, but it's really their own experiences, or their experiences with people that they are close to, put into book form and listed as research, when it's really more anecdotal experience versus research.
Yep, I think that's right. And we have a model, kind of something that I developed basically over the years, just to help me teach incoming leadership students, just an approach, experience agnostic, very simple model of, these are just some basic things everyone can learn. Start here, you'll get the rest. And so everybody knows, I mean, we are using a lot of our experience, but man, I mean, we are really, everything we assert.
You can use experience, but if you use experience and back it up with research, that's very different than experience alone and making it anecdotal.
Because that's not worth anything. But we are taking the Harvard B School approach of the book it's a book of case studies, right? It's not like, oh, so you spend, this many pages on this captain. That's not it at all. Now, don't get me wrong. We geek out hard in Star Trek in this book because Aaron is even nerdier around some of this stuff than you and me, which is really, and I mean that is mostly a compliment, right?
Kudos to you, Aaron.
Yeah, seriously, my friend. But every chapter then is comprised of half a dozen specific case studies, each case study demonstrating that captain leading in a specific episode. So like Brad, well, I just last week, or as we record, actually, just a couple of days ago, I finished the Cisco chapter.
Oh boy.
And I just kept thinking of you the whole time because it was getting into just some of your favorite stuff from DS9.
Yeah, we've made it clear in past episodes, Cisco is my favorite captain.
Yeah. And well deserved, because I forgot how good of an actor he was.
Yeah, Avery Brooks is phenomenal. The stories that Ira Stephen Bear and the team, including Avery Brooks and others put together, Nana
some of
Visitor,
the best in all canon.
Yeah, and I'm actually yet again binging. I'm just finishing season 3. Nice. It's getting to the point now where I can actually recite as they're going along. The script. I can't remember, it was episode 22 or so when Commander Cisco and his son rebuilt the ancient Bajoran ship.
That was so cool.
Yeah, and ended up getting to light speed without expecting it. So they
like
thought
a
it was
subspace slipstream or something.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So I as a leader, I am looking forward to this I'm going to use a technical term, as an end user. As someone who will find ways, because I actually try to, in the business world, I believe the best leaders are the ones that are training as best they can their replacements.
The last case study we wrote was on how to be an effective leader with an exit strategy. Yeah. And helping your successor. Hilarious.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires on you, but I truly believe from an ethical perspective, in the long run, whether you believe in karma or whatever it else is, you're doing yourself and the organization a favor, whether you like the organization or not. I think it's the ethical thing to do to train your replacement,
because those are the ideals of the Federation. And
let's be honest, do you? And then we'll get back to the other stuff. But this is for you as a writer and for me as a end user again. Do I want my replacement, whether I'm ready to be replaced or not, and that can happen to people? Do I want them to learn how to be a leader on their own and potentially become an ineffective leader? Or do I want to train them in what I feel are ethical standards and a method or a methodology that then can permeate to the next? So in other words, if I don't do it, then there's a higher risk of that replacement being a poor leader. And
I don't think there's even, there's not even a discussion or debate about that, right?
But that's the funny thing is that's not thought about. That's just people are too paranoid and they feel like they need to hold their knowledge close to their vest and they don't want to train their replacements. And I know I'll be honest, I'm 48. So I'm probably.
Are you really? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm giving Jason a gesture right now on camera
he's giving me a namaste of approval.
Yeah. I'm saying you're number one.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
but it's I'm 15, 17 years away from probably calling it quits.
I hope you mean retirement.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hopefully that is retirement.
Right.
But ultimately, I want to be able to look back and say I did the right thing.
Right.
And this type of material, not just your book, but you and I have talked about ethics and
so long
related to this. This is so needed. And I hope that people use this, and this is the first book of a new way of looking at leadership. I'll be honest with you, and I think you'll understand and not take this the wrong way. I hope your book is only the first of many in terms of looking at leadership from a different paradigm. Because we can see it's more prevalent now than it was before. And then I'm going to get off of this topic because I'll soapbox, but it's more prevalent than ever thanks to the pandemic.
So thank you, my friend. Enough about me, enough about the project. Needless to say, our listeners, all of you out there in the Dyson Mind metaverse, is that a thing yet? You'll be
I'll say yes.
Sure. You'll be some of the first to know when the book goes to print, and we'll also be following up on Twitter, because at the risk of being self-aggrandizing, I know my friend Aaron and I, my co-author Aaron and I, we've talked a lot about this, and I mean, our listenership, right? Just the TTRPG Twitter world and its offshoots. These are the people who we care about, and these are the people who have something to say and can maybe put a dent, as you said in one of our recent tweets.
Yeah, you could, all of that group in Twitter are already putting, I mean, on Twitter, TTRPG was a hashtag trending the other day.
Right.
And, I look at anything like right at this moment, the Olympics are going on. So there's an Olympic hashtag that's trending. So, for you and the TTRPG family and RPG family to become a trending topic, says that you're putting a dent in the universe.
Yep.
So kudos to every one of you out there. And I think that's probably why we, if you look at it, education, RPG, Star Trek, all of this, as you can tell, that was kind of what flavored our interviewers, and even all of them, Kelly, Malcolm, Chris, Michael, and Nami, all of them. And I think you'll find with our next 5, it'll be a little bit different flavor, but I think you'll enjoy what you're going to hear. We are obviously at the point that this drops is early March. If everything goes as planned, we are already into our next group of interviews.
We've already wrapped our next, now it's as we record, understanding we record way in advance of many of these episodes. We're already working on our 3rd set of 5, but like you were saying, Brad, our next set, this gets more and more interesting. I think it's fair to say, I think we can say, without giving too much away, that our next set will have a decidedly more D&D flavor to it, although not exclusively, right? We're not trying to just rush, if you will, any given topic in a sequence, but it definitely, like we've joked before, we're not trying to be the Star Trek podcast. And there are a bunch of games we love. And after kind of getting back on track, or maybe we've been on track as we engage in more of this, having done this now with you, Brad, for 40 episodes, my exposure to role-playing games is, you know where I'm going to go, is so far beyond where it was 40 episodes ago. I mean, 40 episodes ago, I had, kind of grown up playing West End D6 Star Wars, still love it. Still kind of want to do that again someday. I had gotten in a few years before to Edge of the Empire and the narrative dice mechanic, which we love. I had played around, no pun intended, I had played around a little bit with Fate, although we'd never actually played. You had gotten me into Pathfinder a bit, and then I was really doubling down, falling in love, and I'm still in love with D&D. I mean, that was it. And that was in our first months doing this. And now, man, thanks to our discussions, thanks to the people who have given us the time to interview and chat, thanks to a lot of interactions on Twitter, right? And just on social media, to be honest, I'm starting to feel like I have a bit of a lay of the land. And there are, for the first time in my life, I look around and it's like, oh, I kind of want to read about that game. I kind of want to learn about that game. I want to, and I'll save some of that for the GM corner, but that's where I am. How about you?
Well, yeah, I think, in all honesty, I mean, I'm, in talking especially with Malcolm from Green Ronin. First of all, he taught us how to pronounce it right. So
Yes,
that
thanks,
was,
Malcolm.
if anything at a minimum, but that's, listening to him, he has an archival knowledge of games that really is fascinating. So even as he was talking about the work he's doing for Green Ronin, he was talking about history and stuff that, I actually had to say off the air, you actually educated me on like the history of RPGs 101. I mean, for the most part,
seriously.
For me, it was okay. Gary Gygax started TSR down in Lake Geneva, which is about an hour away from where I am living right now. And then D&D got bought and got moved around. It ends up with Wizards of the Coast. And then you have Pathfinder that broke off. I'm looking down at my bookshelf and there are the Burning Wheel, Dungeon World, the
Yes.
Age system, Dragon Age, Fantasy Age, Modern Age, which I really hadn't gotten deeply into until we met with Malcolm.
No.
And now, I have Mutant Chronicles, I get a little out of hand, first of all.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't,
you don't regularly send me photos of just sections of your bookshelf.
Yeah. Rune Quest was a more recent one.
Yeah.
I have too much to read and definitely not enough time to do it.
Oh no.
So, and all of that is a testament to the fact that I have learned about so many games that deserve attention.
Yes.
That we did not know about because just by the nature of you and I just got into D&D, we knew there was other stuff out there, but there was a air quote to use a mapping because I've been doing a lot of mapping online. There was a fog of war around it.
Yes. Yeah. Good way to put it.
So, I bring Malcolm up just because he was an encyclopedia of information. Going into our third group, what we have been able to do, let me rephrase that. What other companies have felt comfortable in doing is talking to us about things that we can't talk about yet, that people will see and hear of in the future. And that's not anything because of us personally. We have tried to keep our podcast ethical, keep it even, keep it in the realm of why we started it to begin with. So, you don't hear some of the crazy humor, just like Jason just quoted for me. And you could have said this, I didn't need to, but we've really focused on the meaning of life through the ends of RPGs, through the lens.
And that continues to be our focus.
Yes. And so, we have gotten that. We interview people who are creative and don't necessarily play RPGs,
because it informs the world.
Yeah. And they don't, and a lot of them may not even necessarily realize how their work influences RPGs. And we see that on Twitter. And I know we keep, coming back to it, but that seems to be the biggest world in terms of discussion. Jason and I made the grand mistake when we first started. We're going to create a Facebook page. And after about a month and 10
my daughters had warned me that Facebook is for old people. And I'm like,
Yeah. So you and I, it was November of last year. So we're in March. This is November 21. You can look at our page. I think one night I'm like, okay, let's just start doing this.
Yep.
We
you
were
went nuts.
tweeters.
Yep.
Yeah. And all of a sudden between the both of us, we have met fascinating people and our listener and our viewership and our listenership have grown. And it's because all of you have taken an interest in what we do. And then I'm going to stop on this topic, but I have always said out there, what we provide or what we hope to provide here isn't to replace things that you're already listening to. It's to augment it. So I've always wanted to say, and I've always tried to say, don't cut someone else off to add us into your listening.
Right.
Add us to your listening.
Yep.
Because there's so much other great information out there. You and I both listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
to paraphrase Douglas Adams, we are mostly harmless, and we think we add a voice that isn't out there around role playing. Because like you said, Brett, what gets us going is not just the fun and the nerdery of the games. And I mean, you guys all know how much we like game mechanics. Right. How many discussions have we had on this podcast, especially early on, about game mechanics? And don't worry, there will be more. We haven't forgotten about it. We'll be getting back into some of that, especially as we interview people who are involved with the mechanics. But the whole notion of Dice in Mind is looking at, like you said, Brad, at real life through the lens of RPGs, how real life is emulated in these games and through the mechanics, but then also how the games can inform real life. Like, I know we haven't talked about this since the very beginning of the podcast, but back in the day, but like there are certain events playing when we were all like in high school and especially college. Like I think of one with our dear friend Brian, and we'll post his address and email in the show. No, I'm just kidding, Brian. But I think of one specific scene in a session, which to this day
is this the can episode?
The can episode, and to this day it comes up. And something will happen, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's one of those situations. Or like I'll watch, between Star Trek and Star Wars, and now we know the Orville is on its way back, and we know that the second age of Middle Earth is on its way, right? There are so many things, and I'll look at this stuff, or I'll see something in the news that's like, okay, so how many setback dice did that thing take, right?
Oh, yeah.
How many difficulty dice was that conversation?
Yeah, and the funny thing is I haven't really talked about it on here, but I had some digestive surgery, and when I came out, it was a 2.5 hour surgery that took over 5 hours.
Yep.
Nothing terribly wrong. It just took a long time. And I came out of that, and my wife made it abundantly clear to the nursing staff to keep my phone away from me that night, because I was obviously still sedated.
Yep.
And a little goofy. And I went back a couple days later. I don't think I've even told you this, because this just came to mind as you're talking about this. I looked back when I got home, and you can look at your history. I have an iPhone. You can look at your history of your iPhone searching on your Mac. And the first thing I searched on that day was how to roll dice in bed.
Nerd.
Yeah, exactly. So what am I thinking about as
That's
I'm coming
great.
out of surgery was, do I need because I didn't know what I was gonna
I should have sent you a tower.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to be expecting when I got home. Was I going to have to be laid up for a while?
Right.
Ultimately, it wasn't. I was back to normal. But that was the first thing I looked up, and I am actually still surprised I didn't reach out. Maybe I did. Maybe I sent something. I don't remember. But
nope.
I didn't reach out.
I remember.
And do something silly with my phone because of that. But even after that, I'm thinking about RPGs, and it just reminds me that my poor surgeon had some setback die, because he came out of the, my wife says he came out of there, sweating like he had just eaten spicy food, because he had been so deep into the surgery, which was, it wasn't life or death. It wasn't anything like that. It was just,
but still a big deal.
But it was just like, wow, that poor guy rolled like a couple setbacks, because he was in there a lot longer than he thought he was going to.
But a whole lot of success dice too.
Yeah.
So,
yep. But the point is, and again, I wasn't trying to elicit sympathy or anything. It was,
don't worry, you don't have it.
No, I don't know. I know I don't. Right. But it was the funny thing on how us doing this podcast, and we always talked. We talk even more because we talk about this stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
It triggers other discussions. We have friends that listen.
Of course, sending us stuff now for the podcast.
Yes,
that's awesome.
We have Eric, who sent us. Eric actually got a pre-release version of one of our next interview groups.
Yep, still waiting to hear back about that.
Yep, still haven't heard anything. We sent him a pre-release version.
We think he'll like it. Yeah.
Yep. Folks that don't play, Eric doesn't play. But he listens to it, and one of his comments to us was, was it's like listening to you two talk in the car. When he was listening to it in the car, it's like we were in the car talking and he wanted to interject.
He keeps yelling at the radio because he wants to say something.
Yeah,
which really, from my perspective, makes it the ideal conversation to have with Eric. But yes. I digress.
Yeah, exactly. Him being able to talk and us not, and him and us not having to listen to it. So, but we love you anyway, Eric. Yeah. But we have people involved in this stuff that we know that we would love. Brian, when he has time, Brian's involved where he comes from in public service. Yeah. So he's extraordinarily busy, although he's making some transitions and things. But, we've been trying to get him to game, but because of his involvement things, he hasn't had time. Yep. We have our friend Scott, who I think would come back and play if we could get
Game Master Extraordinaire.
Oh, yeah. And other things that'll be coming up, like we've talked about, we have all met and had, I'm gushing, but the point being is that we have made great contacts with people. We hopefully have brought something to the table by listening to these interviews and listening to us banter here. But we've gotten so much more out of it talking to these folks.
Yeah, having a good time. Appreciate it.
And every time someone big likes a tweet or something like that, that's when we'll ping each other if we haven't looked at it. But
so if you like what you hear, or there's something else you want to hear, then let us know, right? Email us, shoot us a tweet, right? Ping us any way you want, but we would love to hear from people and guide the podcast where it is of the most value to the greatest number of interested and interesting listeners.
I know we're running short on time, but I want to ask two questions. So
42.
One, no, not the answer.
Okay, sorry.
And the answer isn't the questions or the answers you were giving before we started recording either.
Okay.
So
42.
No.
Okay.
What has been, and this is going to put you on the spot. And this is not to disrespect anybody. What has been your favorite moment? Can you think of
in life or with the podcast?
No,
with
in
our
the
40,
podcast.
with our 40 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's a really good, really hard question, Brad.
And you may not be able to answer it right now, but I asked myself this last night.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to respond. One, I think one of them, I don't think I can ping one.
Yeah, I don't think I have one.
I think one was when we had Shelly Mazanoble on, because she was our first interview. Our first non-friend.
Right, exactly.
Interview.
Our first legit, air quotes, famous interview, right? Like a real creative who's out
there. Co-host of the Dragon Talk podcast.
Yeah.
So she was more than gracious enough to come on our show.
She was so kind.
So
I was really got us going then. That really told us, look, this is legs.
That's the first one. There were many more, but
yes,
if I were to pick one, that was the one, because that that changed our path in some ways, in many ways.
I would also add, of the interviews everyone has so far heard, I agree. I think Shelly was, you are so right. I think for me, it's the only interview where I sheepishly found myself geeking out a little bit, was Nami Malamed, because I mean, she's so quick and she's so bright and she's so effervescent. And I mean, I really just in prep for that episode, I had actually started not just listening to her music, but paying attention musically to it. And so that was just, that was really fun.
That was a fun episode. And you kind of hit on it. Normally when we were doing episodes, especially early on, Jason would always, Jason
Brad,
always
be
say,
cool.
Be cool, man. Be cool. Calm down. So he did that to me before Nami, because as a musician and as someone who has studied music in the past, I was excited about this one.
Yeah.
But I kept a more even strain. Jason was geeking out. It wasn't as noticeable as it was with me, but I could tell, because I can see, we could see. I'm like, okay, the tables have turned a little bit. So now here's the second question I have for you.
Okay. Good questions.
Yeah. What has been the greatest challenge for you in doing this podcast? And it may be because of outside things going on. It may be, or it may just be within the podcast itself, production, whatever the case is. What has been, and I don't want to say struggle because
no, but what's the greatest challenge?
What's the greatest challenge?
What's the hardest part?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think just having to work with you. No,
That,
you knew that was
you're
coming.
number one again.
Yeah, though. Thank you for waving at me.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Yeah.
I don't really feel like there have been any truly difficult parts, Brad. I have so enjoyed doing this and so enjoyed doing this with you, and I'm so looking forward to where it's going. Not just next week, but for the next year. I think the hardest part, in fact, the only part that
what was that before? I didn't hear the first part of that.
I don't remember.
Oh, I wanted to in this episode do one single "That's What She Said," and you ruined it.
See, there you are, making it difficult again. No, I think the only part that has in any way proven challenge. Well, actually, I don't want. I want you to answer both these questions too.
Yeah.
Or actually, you answer the first. I want you to answer the second one too. But I'm guessing your answer might partly coincide with mine. I think that the only time I felt challenged with the podcast is we got a little carried away with interviews. Our first, as we were getting established, it took a while to get interviews.
Yeah.
Now we're getting interviews quickly. People are being just very giving of their time and creativity and expertise. And so for the past, as we record today, because we're recording early for a change, the past 2 weeks, we have interviewed so many people. And on top of my schedule and my evening schedule, between my own stuff, between work and piano lessons and some community stuff, and then my girls, it's the first time these past 2 weeks where I was feeling really tired because of the podcast, because we had so many times we were interviewing people, but it's been great, and now we know better.
No, and it was.
How about you?
Part of a lot of it was excitement, because these people were actually agreeing to talk.
Yeah.
And we always tell them we don't want to impact their time. If you could spend 30 minutes, we don't script them, as you probably can tell when we listen.
Pretty clear.
We both are simultaneously working on getting interviews with folks.
Yep.
We coordinate together as to who we want, and then we split up
right
who we're going to reach out to. And all of a sudden we had a lot of them at one time, and all of them were phenomenal. I wouldn't change anything, but we both said, okay, let's give the poor RPG community a break from us reaching out all the time and asking them to be interviewed. And let's give ourselves a little break and enjoy a little bit of banter, which you've heard here. And we've just wrapped another group of them. So as we're recording now, we are working on our third group. So that's why things have been so busy. And so literally, for me, the toughest thing was, in all honesty, you're better organized. We were talking about this on text earlier. You're you're better organized than I am on things. And managing, I hadn't properly managed and merged my work calendar and my home calendar.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
it's like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, all of a sudden, boom. Yeah. And so I'm like, and I didn't regret any of it. It was just like, whew, okay. And the last person we just interviewed, you'll get this. We'll talk about it when it comes up and reference back to this episode. That person had a very long day as well.
Yeah.
And so all of us on here, you could tell all of us were like, okay, we're all tired. Let's just relax and have a convo.
Now we just do one of these a week, one interview a week, approximately.
Yes. We both had a discussion about that and said, okay, we need to practice ourselves.
But it was a good fun lesson to learn. It's many interesting people.
I wouldn't change it just because we had so many of these interesting people that were actually willing to sit down with us, which in some ways, jokes aside, still blows my mind.
Yeah, blows the mind. So as we wander over to the GM corner to wrap up, with your permission, Brad, I'm going to subvert the process and suggest we share what we're kind of working on together as a quick GM corner, which is working on backstories and plots for what? What I should say,
Is this
Brett,
the
this
duet
is
thing okay?
Yeah, it is the
Yeah.
duet thing we're talking about.
So
Yep.
yeah, are you going to go there?
Well, I was just going to say for the background, because we haven't
Yeah.
talked about it in a while, our listeners would know, especially if they have been with us since the first couple dozen episodes, that for the longest time we have been talking about designing a narrative dice adaptation for role-playing Star Trek, which in fact we did.
Mhm.
But
you had done a very robust and detailed beta.
Alpha.
We didn't run it, but
Alpha.
Yeah.
We've got an
version
alpha, yes,
on paper, in computer on paper.
Yep. And we tossed that back and forth. And then because of some of these discussions we've been having with people, we changed our minds because we decided that doesn't have legs, but something might. So not coming soon to a drive-through RPG by you, but sooner than later, what are we starting to seriously talk about?
So we had enough discussion with folks involved in the Star Trek Adventures RPG from Modiphius.
Yep. Thank you, Modiphius. Wonderful people.
Yeah, wonderful people. And I love everything, but I've really come to adore that role-playing game. One of the things that really got us started.
It's people.
It's people.
Yeah, sorry. It's people. Yeah.
And there are some sites out there that do D&D duets.
Yep.
Hint for future interview.
Yep.
And one of the things we started talking about was, what if we did some duet adventures using Star Trek Adventures?
Yeah.
Because you and I only sometimes have time for us to jump on and play for 60 to 90 minutes on our own.
Tight duets that would let others play in stories in Star Trek that aren't being told. And thanks to the new material coming out, whether it's Shackleton Expanse or especially the players and GM guides, there's more material than ever. And
that's, again, we're still playing D&D.
Yep.
We're still, it kind of got dragged just because we've gotten busy, but we still have an open game of Edge of the Empire out there.
I will always play Star Wars. I will always play Star Wars.
We still have those are still open games. We've talked to ourselves and we said we have to limit because and no disrespect to others, we just don't have time.
There are only so many games we can't have time for. At the same time.
And the fact that my books are now spilling out onto the floor is a testament to
that's
that.
Awesome. As it should.
But Star Trek, because it is really the sci-fi between Star Wars and Star Trek, that's the sci-fi that got us into sci-fi, that got us into RPGs. We wanted to work on something that was duet related to Star Trek. Again, with everything going on, like you heard, Jason's writing a book. This isn't going to come out tomorrow. This is stuff that we've just been bantering about that we want to do at some point in the future. But the one thing, and this, we're going to give away a little bit of because I'm known for that. One of the things we want to do is go in the direction of, sorry, I'm banging on the table.
Brad's excited. He's very excited.
I'm excited. Was go in the direction of playing like outside of
the Federation.
Yeah. On the edge.
Yeah.
Much like you saw, if you watch Odyssey, good grief, Discovery.
You mean the one written like 2,500 years ago? Okay, just
exactly. Yeah,
good.
Yeah, not the Iliad or the Odyssey, because the Odyssey was destroyed by the Dominion. But
well done. That was good.
I just watched that episode. I just watched it, but we want to write stuff that is on the fringe, that offers a little bit of creative license without affecting canon.
Exactly. And so maybe to take a cue from Modiphius and the wonderful products they're putting out around Star Trek Adventures, maybe starting with a brief collection of 3 to 5 duet adventures outside of the Federation, all within canon, perhaps fashioned after Modiphius's mission briefings.
Yes.
So that they can be tightly written, put out there for free, and just give players like us who want something more than they've seen the chance to explore and experiment on a whim's notice.
And again, like you said, the player's guide and the game master's guide that are out now really have offered and put out enough info to allow us to create.
Yes.
And as you're going to hear in a future episode,
wink, wink.
That was one of the things they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
when we heard that, it was like, yeah, we're doubling down.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing. I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing what we had talked about in a future episode, and that is they've given us a sandbox.
Yep.
And we're going to use it.
We're going to build a couple castles in that sandbox for Trek, to mix metaphors for all of you.
Yeah. So that's coming. That's why you haven't heard much about the Genesis thing, is because we've really grown fond of the 2D20 system enough that we want to enhance and use that with our own material.
And especially staying true to our initial interests, especially writing these in a way perhaps that can remain potentially agnostic to dice system, so that for people who want to play in 2D20, they can really do so beautifully. For people who don't, they can grab their narrative dice from Edge. They can grab their fate dice. If they really want to, they can take, if you go back to one of our episodes, a microscope approach, not grab any dice, and still play Star Trek within canon and within Modiphius's products. Yeah. All right, everybody. As always, thanks for sticking with us. This was the Big 4-0, and we will see you next week for our second round of interviews with creative, fascinating, sometimes wonderful people. Be well, everybody.